What's happening, people? Sean here from the Spurs Talk Show. I hope you're all very well, happy and healthy, doing the things that you love with the people that you love doing them with. Let's get going. This is a short video just to talk about the predicted lineup, at least my interpretation of the predicted lineup for tomorrow's absolutely crucial and very, very tough encounter with an exciting and growing threat in the Premier League that is Brighton and Hove Albion. The game is at 5:30 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, evening, depending on how you view that kind of weird 5:30 time slot. If you're in the UK, let's get going. Of course, for me, number one, but between the sticks has to be Hugo Lloris. Not necessarily for everybody. A lot of people are starting to get a little bit frustrated, a little bit concerned by some of the mounting mistakes that Hugo Lloris has delivered of late. One thing I would say, in my perspective, is that every player in the Tottenham team has made countless mistakes. Most players have made far, far higher frequency mistakes this season. It's just the fortunate end of being in the outfield is that your mistakes don't always necessarily lead to amplified risk and to negative outcomes. If you're a goalkeeper and you make mistakes, they are particularly highlighted and zoomed in on for discussion, and usually negative discussion. For me, Hugo Lloris is a fantastic shot stopper. I do think against Brighton away, we are going to be on the receiving end of several shots against us. Obviously, we know his distribution isn't great, but for me, there's very few better shot stoppers in the Premier League, and I still have faith in him over Fraser Foster. So for me, it's Hugo in goal. I'm playing a back three, as I'm sure everyone else would with their predicted lineup. For me, Christian Romero is back into some level of form against Frankfurt. I thought it was great to see him starting to rekindle some of that aggressiveness and that anticipation and ability to read the game and come out and start to feel like we're seeing the old Romero re-emerge. For me, he hasn't had a great start to the season. He is woefully below par compared to the Romero that we saw in the games last season. And since he's come back from injury this season, he really hasn't hit the ground running, and we haven't seen him do what we love to see him do, which is crunch players and time those tackles with excellent precision. For me, Romero is obviously going to be on the right-sided centre-back, and I can't wait to see how he deals with the threat of Trossard, who is going to be one of those guys, one of those key men to watch for Brighton. Trossard, of course, scoring a hat-trick for Brighton as they drew away to Liverpool in their new manager's first game in charge. And, it's worth pointing out that not many players ever score hat-tricks in the Premier League away at Anfield. I think Trossard was only the third person ever to do it, behind Andre Arshavin for Arsenal, who scored, I think, 4 goals against Liverpool in his time at Arsenal. And you have to go right back to the start of the Premier League to see the first person to do it, which I think was Peter Undlov, the Zimbabwean international. For those old enough to remember him, it's back in the early 90s, 94, 95 season, something like that. So Romero has got a very, very important matchup that he has to be absolutely excellent in all aspects of his game tomorrow in order to quash and quell the threat of Trossard. Alongside him, look, guys, I spoke to you guys a couple of days ago, I think, or yesterday, about all the defensive options should the news that was emerging with that video that was seen floating around of Eric Dyer limping heavily as he came off the pitch I came off the coach rather after the Frankfurt game when they returned to London. By all reports, he has shaken it off. I did say in that video that best case scenario, he was limping because it might have been like a stub toe or a flesh wound or a cut on his foot that hadn't been, necessarily treated properly. But a couple of days later, and the man, the myth, the legend that is Eric Dyer has seemingly shaken it off and is good to go. That's a real relief for us because we just don't have any other centre-back that is to his standard. And I'm not even one of the people that think his standard is particularly high. But if we were to play some other version of a back three, then we would be experimenting. Whoever would be playing in that role, if he hadn't been fit, would be playing there out of position and for one of the first times ever in a Tottenham shirt. So it's a great relief to have him back. But I do think that we should take the opportunity to remind ourselves that we can't necessarily rely on Eric Dyer. He's not a machine. He's not a robot. And I think in January, then we have to absolutely prioritize that central centre-back as a transfer target, because if Eric Dyer does get injured again for any meaningful length of time, then we could have some real problems. And this should have been fixed in the summer. It wasn't. And that's on certain people like, Paratici, Daniel Levy, Enoch, whatever, and Conte. None of them got together and decided on the right target and paid the right money. Alongside Eric Dyer, I've gone for the Frenchman, Clement Longley. I think he's been growing into his position. I love the fact that he is doing me proud. I spent a lot of time in the summer talking about him, reviewing his stats and finding the reasons to think positively about this loan move. And I think that he's gradually becoming more and more comfortable to playing in a back three alongside Eric Dyer. He's taken advantage of the fact that Ben Davies is injured. According to Paul O'Keefe's kind of predict the Conte team, leaked news, whatever, he thinks that Ben Davies will be back in. I think that would be madness. Ben Davies' form wasn't even that spectacular before he got injured. And with Clement Longley improving in every minute that he's playing over the last 2 or 3 games, I don't know why you would ever dream of taking a player out who's growing in form and playing particularly well for a guy who's just returned from injury and who wasn't particularly playing spectacularly before the injury in the first place. Doesn't make any sense to me. So for me, the back three is Romero, Eric Dyer, and Clement Longley. Obviously, the big decision is we don't have Emerson Royale for the next 3 games. So what are we going to do? The options, of course, are Ivan Perisic, Matt Doherty, or Jed Spence. I think it's fairly reasonable to suggest that from Conte's comments in midweek and in prior press conferences that he doesn't seem to have any faith in Jed Spence's technical ability and whether he thinks he's up to speed yet, which is a frustration to hear. But, he's the guy who's paid the big bucks to make those decisions, and that Matt Doherty hasn't returned from injury to anything like the level that that Conte saw of him when he used him last season. On that basis, we are playing, I think, in my opinion, we're going to play Perisic on the right-hand side and maybe Sessegnon on the left-hand side, which we'll come to in a second. For me, it's still an experiment. Perisic only played about 25 minutes of the game against Leicester in that right wing-back slot before he was switched back and with Sessegnon and played inversion wing-back systems. Look, he didn't play particularly well in the 25, 30 minutes that he had at the right wing-back slot. He did have Davinson Sanchez next to him. So it'll be the first time we get to see Romero and Perisic, if this is true, playing alongside each other. And I'm excited to see it. But for me, I think this is by force, not by choice. I would love to see Tottenham, somehow embrace Jed Spence, but it's obviously not going to happen. So for the time being, we just got to like it or lump it. Perisic on the right-hand side. One thing I do think, I've said this a lot on the channel over the last few months, I do think that Perisic on the left-hand side cramps Sonny's space. I think that the other teams know that Tottenham would be better down the left than they are down the right. They know that Tottenham don't necessarily have any trust, and there's no reason to have any reliability in Emerson Royale going forward. And so when you have Perisic and Sonny on the left-hand side, plus an opposition who anticipate that they're more dangerous down the left than they are on the right, it results in a situation where Sonny is completely cramped out with too many players on the left-hand side from our perspective of the field. Perisic on the right and Sonny on the left tomorrow will be interesting if it's played in a 3-4-3. I haven't gone for that one. But before we get to there, I'm just going to say quickly, I think obviously if Perisic is playing on the right-hand side, then it goes without saying that Sessegnon will be on the left-hand side. For me, I think that Sonny always plays better when Sessegnon is behind him, because Sessegnon isn't that fullback or that wing-back who likes to maraud going forward and run with the ball at his feet like Perisic does. And that, like I said before, in and of itself allows Sonny to have a little bit more time, a little bit more space. So I'm expecting a better performance from Sonny tomorrow, but we'll get there when we get there. This obviously is the time where we decide to start to talk about whether we're going to go 3-4-3 or 3-5-2. Either way, it doesn't matter. We're going to have Pierre-Emile Højbjerg in the team alongside Bentancur. Those two have been ever-present for Tottenham this season and are starting to kind of forge and foster a really healthy relationship that is built on trust and impeccable effort on both parts. For me, Højbjerg has been a revelation this season. He should be the captain, the next Tottenham captain, when Hugo Lloris decides to take off that armband, because he steps up. He is full of passion and integrity and desire and drive and everything that he does. He's an absolute leader of men, and I couldn't be happier with his efforts this season. And Bentancur, whilst he has the ability to go missing in games and he has the ability to be a little bit hot and a little bit cold, when he's hot, he's absolutely scalding. And Bentancur over the last couple of games has been, well, maybe not so much against Frankfurt. I thought Højbjerg took the plaudits more than Bentancur in that game, but he did grow into that game. But before, in the game before, the disappointing result against Arsenal, for me, Bentancur was the only player who came off that pitch that had started the game, at least with any level of credibility. I thought he was fantastic in and amongst a team of people that didn't really take to the game or handle the occasion with the right investment in passion and in energy. Could be leaving it here and going to a 3-4-3, but I'm not. I actually think, I've said this before, I think this is the first time we're going to see the 3-5-2 demonstrated and released from the start. I could be wrong. I've been wrong. I've called for this formation for weeks and weeks and weeks now, but I actually think that given there's about 4 or 5 reasons why I'm going to say this right now. I mentioned this on the Irish Hotspur last night when we did the show with Ben from We Are Tottenham TV and Jack, of course, and Dave. For me, the 3-5-2 tomorrow is absolutely essential because, well, I think it's 4 or 5 reasons. One, with Decky out injured, it leaves us Decky out injured and Lucas Moura out injured, and with Brian Hill not particularly having any faith from the manager, trust from the manager. I think that you only have 3 recognised forwards, and if you go with a 3-4-3, having only 3 recognised forwards, you have no ability to go to a plan B. On top of that, I don't think that Richarlison works on the right-hand side of a 3. And as I said before, if Perisic happened to be on the left-hand side, I don't think that Sonny particularly works on the left of a 3-4-3 when Perisic is behind him. That won't probably be the case tomorrow. But in either event, the first reason why I wouldn't go 3-4-3 and I think 3-5-2 is necessary is because we don't have any ability to go to an offensive plan B if all 3 of our forward lines are on the pitch. The second reason was because we don't know what sort of injury Eric Dyer might be covering. He might be playing with a slight injury because we don't have any real other option, and Conte's asked him to step in, and as such we might see a slightly off par Eric Dyer tomorrow because he's got playing with a bit of pain. For that reason, I think that the back 3 would be maybe a little bit vulnerable to the pace of Trossard. I think we need that extra man to come into the midfield to really make a battle of it. The Brighton 3 in the midfield, or the 4-2-3-1, sorry, the 4-3-2-1 formation, however they do it, or even the 3-4-2-1 formation, is very susceptible to dangerous attacks going forward if they can win the midfield. If they don't win the midfield battle, then they pale in comparison to how they do if they control the midfield. And for me, that's the reason why I want to see Bissouma come back into the team. It worked against Leicester for the last half an hour. I think it will work tomorrow. Obviously, he's playing against his old team. And for me, that will be a big occasion for him. And I think he would have a point to prove. So I've gone for Bissouma, Højbjerg, and Bentancur in the 3. And of course, that means that the 2 people up front that I would go for is Sonny and Kane. Look, for me, you could make the argument that any one of those 3 players could be rested because none of them are particularly playing well. I know Kane has scored 7 goals this season, but his form hasn't been spectacular. We know the problems that Sonny's having. And Richarlison, as much as I love the guy's passion, his character, and his ability to get stuck in and fight, all of those things are fantastic character traits to have. I think that his first touch, his technical abilities right now on the right side just do not suit his game. And everything that he does is an overplay. He tries too many flicks, too many back heels, too many attempts at nutmegs. It's not something that I think is always necessary, or in fact, rarely necessary. And for me, of the 3, this isn't being disloyal to Richarlison or putting out my Sonny badge of honor or my Harry Kane badge of honor. I think that of the 3 of them, for now, considering the magnitude of the game, you have to go with your best 2, and that is Sonny and Kane. But like I say, if it's not working, then I'm more than happy to see Richarlison come off the bench. And when he has come off the bench this season, he's usually looked very busy, especially the later in the game. He comes on with bags of energy, and when the other teams are feeling a little bit tired, then there's an opportunity to take advantage of that. That's my team, guys. Hugo Lloris in goal, Romero, Dyer, and Longley at the back, Sessegnon left wing back, right wing back of Ivan Perisic, a midfield 3 of Bissouma, Højbjerg, and Bentancur. And by the way, I'm not entirely sure which way those 3 will work because they all have the capabilities to play as a 6. They all have the capabilities of playing as an 8, and none of them really have the capabilities that are outstandingly obvious to play in the more advanced role. But for me, I think you might see Højbjerg play a little bit further forward, Bentancur play in the middle, and Bissouma sit back and do more of the defensive duty. This is how I would do it. And then Sonny and Kane up front, going whichever way they need to do. I think that Sonny will need to be at his absolute best tomorrow because he will have opportunities on the counter if Brighton play the way I expect them to. The only thing I would say, guys, is there's absolutely no press conference to go to look towards for any kind of content or comments from Antonio Conte because of the sad news of the passing of the Marine, Mr. Ventroni. He's been out in Italy, I believe, mourning the loss. And so there hasn't been any ability to listen to the press conference from him. So we're all going into this a little bit blind, but that, as far as I'm concerned, would be my first choice 11. Let me know what yours are in the comments below. And I will see you at, I think, 4 o'clock tomorrow, guys, for the Pump Up Show on We Are Tottenham TV. Like, share, and subscribe, guys. Drop your comments below. And as always, guys, bye-bye.